Get ready to jump to warp speed, because in this video you're diving into the fascinating universe of Star Trek. This isn't just another sci-fi franchise. Star Trek has become a cultural phenomenon that's inspired generations of dreamers, tech enthusiasts, and storytellers. Whether you're a diehard Trekkie or just curious about what makes this iconic series so special, you're in the right place. From its first movie in 1966 to its latest adventures, you'll explore how Star Trek has boldly gone where no one has gone before. So grab your tricorder and set your phasers to stun. It's time to embark on a journey through the stars like never before. This is the epic Star Trek series history. And this is nerdsection.com. Star Trek: The Motion Picture, released in 1979, marked the grand return of the iconic Star Trek franchise nearly a decade after the original series concluded. The movie is set several years after the events of the original television show, bringing back the beloved crew of the USS Enterprise, led by Admiral James T. Kirk. The plot revolves around a mysterious and colossal alien entity, later identified as Voyager, that is heading towards Earth, consuming everything in its path. Kirk retakes command of the newly refitted Enterprise, with Spock, who is drawn by a telepathic link to Voyager, and the familiar crew of McCoy, Scotty, Uhura, Chekhov, and Sulu. Together, they set out on a mission to intercept and understand this enigmatic force before it reaches Earth and causes destruction. While the visuals and special effects were groundbreaking at the time, with artistically ambitious sequences and an epic scale that distinguished it from the television series, the pacing of the film drew criticism. Lengthy shots of the Enterprise in space and protracted scenes dedicated to special effects often bogged down the narrative, making the movie feel slower and less dynamic than its TV predecessor. The philosophical core of the movie, which aligns with the franchise's tradition of exploring complex, thought-provoking themes, such as the nature of life and the quest for knowledge, was praised. Yet some fans and critics found the film's plot to be convoluted and its character development lacking compared to the interpersonal dynamics and adventurous spirit that defined the original series. Unlike the original series, which focused on episodic storytelling with a blend of character-driven plots and ethical dilemmas, Star Trek: The Motion Picture embraced a more cinematic and grandiose approach. This shift in tone and style was significant. The TV series often thrived on its limited budget, fostering ingenuity and more intimate storytelling, whereas the movie sought to leverage the expansive possibilities of a feature film budget, emphasizing spectacle and scale. In summary, Star Trek: The Motion Picture ambitiously brought Star Trek to the big screen, reuniting fans with its iconic characters and offering stunning visual effects. However, its slower pace and focus on spectacle drew mixed reactions, setting it apart from the fast-paced, character-centric episodes that had originally captured audiences' imaginations. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is a pivotal entry in the Star Trek franchise, often celebrated for its dramatic storytelling and character development. The film centers around Admiral James T. Kirk, facing off against his old adversary, Khan Noonien Singh, a genetically engineered tyrant from the 20th century. Khan seeks revenge on Kirk for marooning him 15 years earlier on the desolate planet of Ceti Alpha 5. Utilizing his superior intellect and fierce determination, Khan steals the USS Reliant and a powerful device known as the Genesis Project, which has the potential to create or destroy entire worlds. The ensuing conflict leads to a cataclysmic showdown, culminating in one of the Star Trek series' most iconic and emotional moments, the self-sacrifice of Spock to save the Enterprise and its crew. The film excels in its deep exploration of themes like vengeance, aging, and sacrifice. The rivalry between Kirk and Khan is intensely personal and compelling, fueled by Ricardo Montalban's outstanding performance as the vengeful antagonist. The emotional weight of Spock's death adds a level of gravitas, magnifying the film's impact and leaving a lasting impression on audiences. However, The Wrath of Khan is not without its criticisms. Some fans and critics pointed to plot conveniences and pacing issues. Additionally, the film's reliance on prior knowledge of the Star Trek: The Original Series episode Space Seed, where Khan first appears, may render certain aspects less impactful for newcomers. Compared to its predecessor, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, The Wrath of Khan takes a notably different approach. The first film was more abstract and introspective, focusing on grand philosophical ideas and offering a polished but slow-paced and cerebral journey. In contrast, The Wrath of Khan embraces a more action-oriented and intimate narrative, drawing heavily from the swashbuckling, nautical themes reminiscent of Horatio Hornblower's stories. The character-driven conflict and emotional depth of the second film helped to reinvigorate the franchise, balancing action with character moments and setting a new standard for future installments. Overall, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan remains a standout in the Star Trek canon for its thrilling plot, memorable performances, and emotional depth, making it a seminal film that significantly shaped the future trajectory of the series. Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, released in 1984, is a significant installment within the Star Trek franchise. It continues the narrative established in its predecessor, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. In this movie, Enterprise Captain James T. Kirk and his loyal crew embark on a desperate mission to recover Spock's body, which had been jettisoned to the newly formed Genesis planet. The film reveals that Spock's essence, or Katra, resides within Dr. Leonard McCoy's mind, compelling the crew to reunite Spock's body and spirit, thus restoring their beloved Vulcan friend to life. As they venture into restricted territory, they face the wrathful Klingon commander Krug, who seeks the Genesis technology for his own gains. The movie excels in its exploration of themes like friendship, loyalty, and sacrifice. Viewers appreciate the character-driven story, which allows the ensemble cast to shine and provides emotional depth and continuity from the previous film. The return of Leonard Nimoy's Spock, coupled with solid performances from William Shatner as Kirk and DeForest Kelley as McCoy, adds a poignant layer to the story. Some critics argue that the plot occasionally treads familiar ground, and its pacing can be uneven, leading to moments that feel drawn out. Additionally, the special effects, while ambitious for their time, haven't aged as well as those in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Compared to its predecessor, The Search for Spock places greater focus on personal stakes, rather than the grandiose space battles that characterize The Wrath of Khan. This movie ranks more as an intimate character drama, rather than an action-packed space opera. This change in tone, while appreciated by some for its emotional heft, was considered a departure by fans who preferred the intense, ship-to-ship combat of the previous film. Overall, Star Trek III: The Search for Spock plays a crucial role in the overarching narrative of the Star Trek universe, bridging the story between The Wrath of Khan and the subsequent film Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, and reinforcing the enduring bonds between the iconic crew members of the USS Enterprise. Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, released in 1986, is the fourth film in the iconic Star Trek movie series, which originated from the original Star Trek television series, created by Gene Roddenberry in the 1960s. The story of the film takes a significant departure from the traditional space exploration and interstellar conflicts typical of the previous movies and series. Instead, it delivers an environmental message wrapped in a time travel adventure. In this installment, Admiral James T. Kirk and his crew must travel back in time to 20th century Earth to save their present day from an alien probe that is causing ecological havoc, threatening to destroy humanity. The probe is seeking communication with humpback whales, an extinct species by the 23rd century. Kirk and his team commandeer a Klingon bird of prey to journey back to 1986, where they must locate and transport a pair of humpback whales to the future to respond to the probe's signals. The Voyage Home stands out for its unique tone, which blends humor with the high-stakes drama Star Trek fans are accustomed to. The movie's environmental theme provides a poignant reminder of the impact of human activity on the planet, making it resonate with audiences beyond typical sci-fi fans. The performances by the cast, particularly the chemistry between the main crew members, are widely praised. The film also benefits from its lighter moments, which include the crew navigating the complexities and quirks of the 1980s, generating comedic scenes that are endearing and memorable. However, the film is not without its critics. Some reviewers feel that the departure from the traditional Star Trek style, particularly the lack of space battles and deep philosophical explorations, might not appeal to all fans. The plot's reliance on time travel, a concept frequently utilized in science fiction, might seem overplayed to some viewers. Despite these critiques, Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home is often celebrated for its bold narrative choices and its successful blending of entertainment with a powerful environmental message. Compared to its predecessor, The Voyage Home shifts from the darker themes of loss and resurrection to a more lighthearted and optimistic narrative. While The Search for Spock focused heavily on the personal journey of Kirk and the resurrection of Spock, The Voyage home broadens its scope to address global ecological issues, showing the versatility of the Star Trek franchise in tackling diverse themes and storytelling approaches. Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, released in 1989, is the fifth installment in the original Star Trek film series. The story follows Captain Kirk, Spock, and Dr. McCoy as they face off against a rogue Vulcan named Spock, Spock's half-brother, who hijacks the USS Enterprise. Spock seeks to find and uncover the secrets of the mythical planet Sha-Ka-Ri, which he believes to be the location of God. The crew confronts mind control, philosophical dilemmas, and the ultimate existential question of the divine as they navigate through uncharted space. While the film touches on intriguing themes of faith, belief, and the search for meaning, it has been met with mixed reactions. On the positive side, the movie offers moments of genuine camaraderie between the beloved characters, and it attempts to delve into deeper, more contemplative narratives than its predecessors. The humorous interactions, especially among the main trio, are a high point, maintaining the spirit of the original series. However, the film also has its drawbacks. Critics and fans have often cited the movie's inconsistent pacing, uneven special effects, and sometimes awkward blending of humor and gravity. The depiction of God as an antagonist left many viewers unsatisfied, feeling that the resolution fell flat compared to the build-up. The financial constraints faced during production visibly impacted the final product, making it feel less polished than earlier films. Compared to its predecessor, which was celebrated for its lighter tone and environmental message, The Final Frontier takes a darker and more introspective route. The Voyage home used time travel and humor effectively to explore contemporary issues, making it accessible to a broader audience. In contrast, The Final Frontier eschews much of that levity for a heavier, more philosophical journey that doesn't always land as effectively. Nonetheless, the film is an essential chapter in the Star Trek saga, continuing to explore complex ideas about humanity, faith, and the universe through the eyes of its iconic characters. If you're enjoying our journey through the history of Star Trek, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us out. And if you want to stay up to date with all things nerdy, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, released in 1991, stands as a significant installment in the Star Trek franchise. The movie's plot revolves around a critical period of political change. After decades of Cold War, the Klingon Empire seeks peace with the United Federation of Planets, following an environmental disaster on their homeworld. However, this path to peace is jeopardized when the Klingon Chancellor is assassinated, and Captain James T. Kirk, along with Dr. Leonard McCoy, is framed for the murder. The crew of the USS Enterprise must uncover the real conspirators to prevent an interstellar war, ultimately spotlighting themes of prejudice, diplomacy, and mutual understanding. The good aspects of Star Trek VI include its strong narrative, which mirrors real-world political events such as the end of the Cold War, providing a thought-provoking and mature storyline. Directed by Nicholas Meyer, the film features crisp dialogue, memorable performances, especially from the veteran cast, and a compelling whodunit mystery. Additionally, the special effects and production design contribute to the high-quality visual experience expected from a Star Trek film. On the downside, some critics and fans argue that the film's heavy focus on political intrigue might detract from the adventurous spirit that characterized earlier entries in the franchise. Also, certain character decisions and plot developments may feel contrived or overly convenient to some viewers. Compared to its predecessor, Star Trek VI moves away from the somewhat unfocused plot and mixed critical reception of the former. Where The Final Frontier was noted for its exploration of philosophical and spiritual questions, The Undiscovered Country centers more around realpolitik and espionage. This sharp shift in tone and content demonstrates the franchise's versatility and its ability to address a wide array of themes while leveraging the rich backdrop of its established lore. Star Trek Generations, a 1994 film, stands as a pivotal entry in the Star Trek franchise, serving as a bridge between the original series films and those featuring the cast of Star Trek: The Next Generation. The story centers on the efforts of Captain Jean-Luc Picard and his crew to stop Dr. Tolian Saran, a scientist who is obsessed with entering the paradise-like Nexus, a mysterious ribbon that grants eternal bliss. To achieve his goal, Saran doesn't hesitate to destroy entire star systems, forcing an unlikely alliance between Picard and the legendary Captain James T. Kirk, who becomes entangled in the Nexus and helps save the day. The film shines with strong performances from Patrick Stewart and William Shatner, effectively blending the distinct personalities of their iconic characters. The visual effects and production design are also notable, delivering an aesthetic that captures the grandeur of the Star Trek universe. However, the movie has its shortcomings. Critics and fans alike have taken issue with the convoluted plot and some underdeveloped characters. The film's attempt to juggle the casts of both the original series and the next generation is seen as both ambitious and problematic, sometimes resulting in a lack of coherence and focus. Compared to its predecessor, Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, which was the swan song for the original series crew, Generations offers a more segmented experience. The tone is markedly different, shifting away from the political intrigue and stronger narrative cohesion of the Undiscovered Country, and leaning more into emotional and existential themes. This transition symbolizes the shift from the seasoned crew of the original Enterprise to the younger, yet experienced crew of the next generation, aiming to bring fresh energy and perspectives to the franchise. Star Trek First Contact, released in 1996, is the 8th film in the Star Trek franchise, and the second to feature the cast of Star Trek, The Next Generation. The film is set in the 24th century and follows the crew of the USS Enterprise E. Their mission becomes critical when the Borg, a cybernetic alien race with the goal of assimilating all life, travel back in time to prevent Earth's first contact with an alien species, the Vulcans. This event is pivotal as it leads to a united Earth and the eventual formation of the United Federation of Planets. The crew must ensure that Zefram Cochrane, the inventor of warp drive, makes his historic flight, thus preserving the timeline. The movie was praised for its intense action sequences and emotional depth, particularly showcasing the internal struggles of Captain Jean-Luc Picard, played by Patrick Stewart. The special effects were groundbreaking for the time, and the film successfully balances character-driven storytelling with thrilling sci-fi action. However, some critics pointed out that the movie's darker tone might alienate fans accustomed to the more optimistic outlook of Star Trek. Additionally, the portrayal of Zefram Cochrane as a flawed, reluctant hero was a departure from the idealistic vision presented in earlier series, which sparked mixed reactions among fans. Compared to its predecessor, Star Trek Generations, First Contact is more tightly focused, with a significant emphasis on the conflict with the Borg and time travel, whereas Generations aimed to bridge the gap between the original series crew and the Next Generation cast. First Contact features a darker, more urgent tone, with less of the exploratory and philosophical elements seen in the Star Trek, the Next Generation television series, reflecting a shift towards a more action-oriented approach. This tonal shift and the high stakes involved in the plot make First Contact a standout entry in the Star Trek film series, despite its departures from the franchise's traditional themes. Star Trek Insurrection, released in 1998, is the 9th film in the acclaimed Star Trek franchise, following the crew of the USS Enterprise E as they uncover a Federation conspiracy and become entangled in a dispute over the fate of an idyllic planet. The plot revolves around Captain Jean-Luc Picard and his crew discovering that the inhabitants of the peaceful Baku planet, who have found a way to halt the aging process, are at risk of being forcibly relocated by the Federation, in league with the shady Sona race. Picard defies orders from his superiors to protect the Baku people and their way of life, ultimately exposing the machinations of a Federation admiral and fighting to uphold the principles of the Prime Directive. While the movie offers an intriguing moral dilemma and showcases the beloved cast in a familiar yet ethically nuanced dilemma, Star Trek Insurrection received mixed reviews. On the positive side, the film successfully delves into themes of loyalty, the sanctity of life, and the ethical responsibilities of those in power. The picturesque setting and lighter tone, interspersed with humor, also provide a refreshing contrast to the darker atmosphere of its predecessor. Critics pointed out that the plot sometimes felt comparable to an extended television episode rather than a cinematic event, lacking the high stakes and groundbreaking narrative of earlier films in the series. The antagonists, the Sonya, were seen as underwhelming compared to previous threats faced by the crew. Insurrection adopts a more introspective approach. First Contact's intense action sequences and dramatic story arcs provided a gripping cinematic experience that Insurrection struggles to match. While First Contact benefited from revisiting the franchise's lore and deepening existing character dynamics, Insurrection attempts to stand on its own with a tale centered around moral choices and ethical dilemmas, which resonated differently with audiences. Ultimately, Star Trek Insurrection contributed to the rich tapestry of Star Trek's legacy, continuing the adventures of the Enterprise crew while prompting viewers to ponder the consequences of unchecked power and the importance of ethical decision-making. Star Trek Nemesis, released in 2002, is a significant installment within the Star Trek universe, marking the 10th film in the franchise and the fourth to feature the cast of Star Trek: The Next Generation. The plot follows the USS Enterprise E as the crew encounters Shinzon, a clone of Captain Jean-Luc Picard, who has risen to power as the leader of the Romulan Empire. Driven by a thirst for vengeance and possessing advanced technology, Shinzon plans to use a devastating weapon to conquer Earth. One of the notable aspects of Star Trek Nemesis is its ambitious attempt to delve deeper into Picard's character by presenting a dark reflection of him in the form of Shinzon. This dynamic provides an interesting psychological twist as Picard confronts his own potential for darkness. The film also showcases impressive visual effects and space battles, delivering the high-stakes action that fans expect from a Star Trek movie. However, Nemesis received mixed reviews and faced criticism for several reasons. The storyline, while intriguing, was seen by some as a rehashing of past plot elements rather than offering a fresh take. Additionally, the film's pacing and character development were points of contention, with some feeling that beloved characters were not given sufficient screen time or meaningful arcs. Furthermore, the movie's darker tone and departure from the idealistic vision of the future that Star Trek is known for left some longtime fans unsatisfied. Comparing Nemesis to its predecessor, Star Trek Insurrection, 1998, reveals several differences. While Insurrection focused on a moral dilemma and the preservation of a peaceful community, Nemesis leans heavily into action and personal conflict. This shift in focus showcases varying interpretations of the Star Trek ethos and the evolution of the franchise's narrative style. Ultimately, Star Trek Nemesis stands as a controversial chapter in the Star Trek saga. While it aimed to explore deeper themes and provide thrilling action sequences, it ultimately struggled to capture the critical acclaim and fan adoration of earlier installments. Hey there, Trekkies! If you're enjoying this deep dive into the history of Star Trek, drop a comment below about your favorite Star Trek movie. Now let's warp back into the video. Star Trek marks a significant reboot within the Star Trek franchise, offering a fresh take on the beloved universe created by Gene Roddenberry in the 1960s. Directed by J.J. Abrams, the film revitalizes the series with a new cast portraying iconic characters such as Captain James T. Kirk, Spock, and Uhura. The story follows a young and rebellious Kirk, played by Chris Pine, as he joins Starfleet and eventually assumes command of the USS Enterprise. Alongside Zachary Quinto's Spock, they confront a Romulan named Nero, portrayed by Eric Bana, who has traveled back in time to seek revenge against the Federation for the destruction of his home planet. The movie is celebrated for its dynamic and visually stunning space sequences, benefiting from modern special effects and an energetic score by Michael Giacchino. The performances of the new cast were widely praised, particularly the chemistry between Pine and Quinto, which brings a fresh yet familiar dynamic to the Enterprise crew. The reboot also successfully integrates elements of humor and action, making it accessible to a broader audience, including those unfamiliar with the Star Trek lore. However, some longtime fans criticized the film for straying from the philosophical and exploratory roots of the original series and movies. The emphasis on action and spectacle was seen as a deviation from the intellectual and moral quandaries that traditionally defined Star Trek. Additionally, the use of a parallel universe narrative, introduced by Leonard Nimoy's appearance as the older Spock, served both as a clever plot device and a point of contention among enthusiasts who felt it undermined the established canon. Comparatively, previous Star Trek movies, and especially the original series and its successors like The Next Generation, were more focused on exploring complex themes of diplomacy, ethics, and the human condition. These earlier iterations often featured slower-paced narratives that delved deeply into character development and intricate storytelling. The 2009 film's significant departure from this model, prioritizing thrilling action and a brisk plot, marked a distinct evolution of the franchise aimed at rejuvenating its appeal for a contemporary audience while retaining its core thematic essence. Comparatively, Star Trek Into Darkness differs from previous Star Trek movies and series primarily due to its alignment with the alternate timeline established in the 2009 reboot. This means character arcs and storylines are altered from the original series and films. Unlike the philosophical and exploratory tone characteristic of earlier Star Trek iterations, Into Darkness takes a much more action-oriented approach, with high-stakes drama and a darker narrative. Despite these differences, the movie succeeded in modernizing the franchise for a new audience, blending suspense with the cherished legacy of Star Trek. One of the strengths of Star Trek Into Darkness lies in its thrilling action sequences and spectacular visual effects, which encapsulate the grand scale of space exploration and battles, heightening viewers' sense of adventure. The film also features compelling performances, particularly from Cumberbatch, whose portrayal of Khan exudes a chilling intensity that adds depth to the villain's character. However, the movie faced criticism in several areas. Longtime fans of the franchise pointed out narrative inconsistencies and expressed dissatisfaction with the reimagining of Khan, feeling that it lacked the emotional weight and depth found in the original portrayal by Ricardo Montalban in Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, 1982. Additionally, some viewers felt that the film's pacing was rushed, and certain plot elements were convoluted, leading to a somewhat disjointed storyline. Comparatively, previous Star Trek movies, and especially the original series and its successors like The Next Generation, were more focused on exploring complex themes of diplomacy, ethics, and the human condition. These earlier iterations often featured slower-paced narratives that delved deeply into character development and intricate storytelling. The 2009 film's significant departure from this model, prioritizing thrilling action and a brisk plot, marked a distinct evolution of the franchise aimed at rejuvenating its appeal for a contemporary audience while retaining its core thematic essence. Star Trek Beyond, released in 2016, is the third installment in the rebooted Star Trek film series, also known as the Kelvin Timeline. Directed by Justin Lin and co-written by Simon Pegg and Doug Jung, the film continues the adventures of the USS Enterprise crew, led by Captain James T. Kirk, played by Chris Pine. In this movie, the crew finds themselves stranded on an uncharted planet after their ship is ambushed and destroyed by a relentless enemy named Krall, portrayed by Idris Elba. The crew must now work together to defeat Krall and prevent him from using an ancient bioweapon to wreak havoc across the galaxy. Star Trek Beyond offers a blend of high-octane action and heartfelt character moments. One of the highlights is its emphasis on teamwork and the relationships between the main crew members, giving each character their moment to shine. The film also pays homage to the original Star Trek series, with nods to classic themes of exploration and unity. Its pacing and visual effects received praise, with the portrayal of alien worlds and space battles being particularly compelling. However, the movie is not without its criticisms. Some fans felt that Krall was an underdeveloped villain, lacking the depth that made previous antagonists memorable. Additionally, while the action scenes were exhilarating, some believed they came at the expense of the more thought-provoking and philosophical aspects that Star Trek is known for. Comparing Star Trek Beyond to previous entries in the franchise highlights a few key differences. Unlike the first two films in the reboot series, Beyond leans more into the exploratory spirit of Star Trek, echoing the episodic nature of the original TV series and its sequels. This is in contrast to the heavier and more dramatic tones of Star Trek from 2009 and Star Trek Into Darkness from 2013. In terms of style, Justin Lin's direction brought a faster pace and more dynamic action sequences, a departure from the more narrative-driven approach of J.J. Abrams, who directed the previous two movies. In summary, Star Trek Beyond stands as a worthy addition to the Star Trek canon, blending action with the franchise's foundational themes of exploration and camaraderie, despite some shortcomings in character development and philosophical depth. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey through the history of Star Trek movies, don't miss our next video where we dive into the rich history of the Star Trek series. See you!